Hi there, welcome to Excel 2019. My name is Cindy and I'm going to be your instructor and help walk you through this series of videos. I want to take a few moments and let you know a little bit about myself and what to expect as you walk through this course. I've actually been teaching Excel for quite a number of years now, over 15, and I teach everything from the basics all the way to advanced features. So hopefully we'll be able to get a lot of this information over to you quickly so that you can get started working on some of your projects. If you're brand new to Excel, make sure you watch these in order. If you try to watch them out of order, it may not make much sense to you. And go ahead and watch them again and again if you need to. I want you to have the concepts down before you move on to the next video. If you've been using Excel for a while, hopefully you'll get some tips, tricks, easier ways to do things. Well, let's go ahead and get started, and we're going to go into section 2 and talk about what's new in Excel 2019.
Welcome to the course. Please watch this video as we have some important information that you'll need to get the most out of this class. This course is video-based but includes downloadable exercise files. The exercise files relate to specific exercise videos. Don't worry though, your instructor will tell you which files to open for each exercise. You can download the files from the next module. Here's how. Once you've downloaded the files, you'll need to unzip them. If you've not unzipped files before, here's how. All of our videos are high definition. Depending on your internet speed, Udemy may default to a lower playback level. We recommend viewing in high definition. Here's how you can change that. If you want to speed up or slow down your video playback, you can do that too. And here's how. Udemy may ask you to review this course after you've only completed a few modules. We know that can be annoying, as it's like being asked to review a 2-hour movie after 5 minutes. It's up to you when you want to leave a review. We hope you enjoy the course.
Hey there, welcome back. We are still in Module 1 where I'm giving you an overview or an intro to Excel. I want to go ahead in section 2 here and just talk real quick about what's new in Excel 2019. There's some changes you'll want to be aware of, especially if you've worked in older versions. The basics always work the same, but let's jump right in and I'll show you some of the new features. Let's start with one of the newest features in Excel, and that has to do with selecting. Now, selecting has always been around, but there's a little twist to it now. Before, if we wanted to select a range, we would go ahead and do that. We'd hold Control and maybe get another range. We could click over here, we can click over here, wherever we want. But if we wanted to, for example, deselect this one, we'd have to click away from it and then start all over again. What they've done now is you have the ability to deselect some of the cells you've already selected without having to start over. So let's say again I just select this and I hold Control and come over here, and maybe I get this and maybe over here. And now I say I really don't want these selected. As long as I'm holding Control, I can click and drag through those and they are gone and the other cells are still selected. That's a really helpful little feature. The next feature I want to talk about is the new accessibility checker. For people who maybe can't see very well or disabled, sometimes they can't see when there are little things that might be wrong in their spreadsheet, and Excel will try to help them out by letting them know where some of those things are and what to do about them. Let me show you how the accessibility checker works. For those people that are disabled or possibly visually impaired, sometimes if there are weird things going on your screen, you may not be able to see it very well. Excel has this feature called the Accessibility Checker, which will help look for those things for you and then give you a real quick one-click way to go ahead and fix those things. One of the things that you'll see in a moment is if you look at this word months, this is actually in a combination of cells A and B. They've merged them together. And someone that's visually impaired may not notice that right away. Let's go ahead and look at the Accessibility Checker. You will find that under the Review tab. And then right here it says Check Accessibility. It'll pop up on the right hand side and it's found a couple of things. Let's click on the first one and you'll see it sees those merged cells we mentioned and it tells me which cells they're in. Now I could come over here and actually fix it, but notice that I can actually click the down arrow and then I can go ahead and unmerge it right from here. So that's one thing I can do. Now I would have to go back at this point and actually move it over here if I want it to look right. Now Excel also found something else. Notice it says default sheet names. It doesn't like the fact that sheet 1 is named sheet 1. For someone who's visually impaired, they might not be able to read that very well because it's small. We can go down and rename this, and I can do it right here, and I can call it My Sales Report. And that way it'd be much easier for someone to actually see what's on that particular sheet. And that's how the Accessibility Checker works. Another feature that's new to Excel 2019 is the Translate feature. The Translate feature enables you to take selected text and translate it to a different language. Whichever cell or range of cells I have selected, Excel will go ahead and translate it into another language for me. Let's say I'd like to know what the word months looks like in Spanish. As long as I have that cell selected, I can go to the Review tab, choose the Translate option, and you'll see the translator appear on the right. The very first time you do this, it will take a minute to load the translator, but then after that, it pops up just like this. Now here's the word months I have selected, and down here I can pick the language I'd like to see months translated into. So you can see that if I wanted Spanish, for example, I can choose it right there. You can also do it in reverse. If you happen to have Spanish text out here somewhere, see how I can flip this and it tells me this word is the Spanish word and this is the English word. And that's pretty cool when you want to work with translations and see what words look like in another language. Another new feature that Excel has is a new function called concat. We used to have one called concatenate, and that would actually merge two cells together in the same cell, and that is still there, but it's going away. So I want to show you how this works because it'll be the same with a couple of additional new features. We used to have a feature called concatenate, and what concatenate would do was take two cells, like maybe Sarah Kling here, and merge them together in the same cell. There are times when you want to do that. Keep in mind, if you're going to sort and filter, you do want to keep these in separate columns, but let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to right click on column D and insert a new column there so that we can put our merged cells in. Now I'm going to start with the equal sign because I am writing a formula. I'm going to put CON, and that brings up all the functions that have CON in them. Now here's the old one, concatenate, right here. You can see it has a yellow, what we call a yield sign. That means that that particular function is getting ready to go away soon. This new concat has actually replaced it. What I'm going to do is double click on concat to stick it in there. And the first thing it wants to know is what's the first piece of text I want to merge. That would be Sarah. I'm going to put my comma, and then it wants to know what the second piece of text is, and that would be Kling in this case. And that's all I want. I'll go ahead and hit the Enter key, and there's Sarah Kling. It's merged those two pieces of information together. Now you'll notice there's no space in there. In order to get the space, I just double clicked so that we can edit our formula. You want to click after that comma and before the C, because you're going to add an open quote, a comma, a space, a close quote, and then a comma. That tells Excel there's another piece of data in there, and the space in there is what I'm looking for. I'll go ahead and hit the Enter key, and now you can see it's got the space. I can copy this down and have all of these. Now let me go ahead and delete this. The concat function also has an additional thing that it will do. Let's say that you want to take all of these, for example, and merge those into one cell. All we'd have to do is come over here and start with our equal sign. We'll put our concat in again. And now what we'll do is select all of these and hit the enter key, and now you'll see that it's actually put those all in one cell. Now there's no way you can go back and put the spaces in unless you manually do it, but you'll see this goes on and on and on forever, especially if you had a long list like this. So that's what the concat feature will do for you. Those are just a few of the new features that are in Excel 2019. As we go through this series of videos, I'm going to point out some of the other new features and we'll see how to use those as well. Let's go ahead now and jump into section 3 where I can give you a course overview, and that way you know what to expect as you go through this course. Hey, this is Cindy. I just wanted to give you a quick overview of what we're going to be covering throughout this set of videos. We're going to start the very beginning. I'm not going to assume you know anything. We're going to go over the screen itself, get you familiar with terminology, what are some of those pieces and parts, how those buttons work, and then we'll jump right in and start creating what we call an Excel workbook. Sometimes people will call these Excel sheets, and they're really not sheets because the sheets are actually in the workbook. The file itself is called the workbook. That's the terminology we're going to be using. We're going to go all the way through. I'm going to show you how to set up a workbook from scratch. We're going to talk about how to work with those different sheets. We'll go through all the formatting options. How do you print those borders? We're going to go all the way through and create some formulas as well. A formula is basically a mathematical calculation that you can have Excel do, and that's the beauty of working with any kind of spreadsheet or workbook, is being able to do those mathematical calculations. Let's go ahead and just jump right in. I'm going to go ahead and start by giving you an overview of the Excel window first so you'll know exactly what we're doing as we move forward. Let's move over into section 4. Welcome back. We are working in Module 1, and in this module we are getting an introduction to Excel. We're all the way down to section 4 now, where I want to give you an overview of the Excel window. It's going to be very helpful for you, especially when you get started, if you know where to look for things and some different terminology that we're going to use in a lot of these videos. Let's go ahead and flip over to Excel and I will show you how to get started. Let's go ahead and start at the top left of your screen and we'll work our way down. The first thing I want to point out is this whole line right here, which is what we call the Quick Access Toolbar. We're kind of getting away from the term toolbar, but you'll notice that we have one left here in Microsoft Excel, and it has a few of the common options that you're going to use on a regular basis. Get really familiar with the very first one, that left arrow. That is your undo. If you make a mistake, you're going to be able to undo that mistake. You have an arrow to the right of it, which if you click on it will give you a drop-down list of all the things you've done. If you wanted to click at any point on that list, you could undo everything from that point up at the same time. There's also a redo. That's the arrow that points to the right. Redo allows you to bring back one at a time those things that you have undone. A couple of other ones just to be aware of. This one is your Save button. If you happen to be working in this file and you just want to hit the Save button, you can do that at any point. Also, there's a quick print option right there, which will allow you to just print your file. You'll notice there's a down arrow to the right, and this lets you customize your Quick Access Toolbar, because you may have some buttons here that I don't have and vice versa. You can see that if you click on one, it adds it here, or if you uncheck it, then it takes it away. One that I want you to add is the email button. If you happen to use Outlook for your email, you will love this little feature, because what it allows you to do is go ahead and create a message right from here and attach this file. And we'll talk more about that in a later module. The next thing I want to point out is the fact that this whole bar all the way across is what we call your title bar. You'll notice that currently it says Book 1, and it lets me know I'm working in Excel. Book 1 is the name of a blank workbook. When you're working in Excel and you first turn it on or you click New, you're working in what we call a blank workbook. Sometimes people call Excel files worksheets. They're not worksheets, they're workbooks with sheets inside of them. You're going to see at the bottom of your screen a sheet 1. That's the actual worksheet. And by clicking the plus sign, I can add as many worksheets as I would like at the bottom. But the file itself is called a workbook. Once you decide to save this file, you will give it your own name and it'll be reflected right here in the title bar. Now over on the right, you do have your minimize, restore, and close that will let you make the window smaller, or if you wanted to close it, you'd be able to do that as well. The next thing I want to point out across the top are your tabs. You can see that you're currently on the Home tab because it looks white, but notice you can click any of these tabs to go ahead and see what's called the ribbon below it. When I click on Home, for example, this whole line across is called the ribbon. And on each ribbon you will find groups of buttons. This is called the clipboard grouping. Each group name is right here at the bottom. Most groups, not all, have a little arrow on the bottom right. You'll notice that each group has different options. You just click the buttons to get to the options, but what if there's an option here that falls under that group name and you don't see it here? That's when you click the arrow to get to those additional choices. You'll find that once you're in what we call a dialog box, you can go ahead and close it with the X at the top. If you click the File tab, that'll take you into what we call the Backstage view. We're going to look at this over in section 6, but I just wanted to show you that if you happen to click there, hit the left arrow and that'll take you back. Underneath your ribbon, you're going to see what we call the work area. This is where you're going to actually type your text or your numbers or your formulas. You're going to see that your work area is divided into columns which go up and down. Your columns are labeled with a letter at the top. You have 16,384 columns available to use. That's quite a few columns, so you're not going to run out of space there. Now your rows that go across, notice they're labeled with a number over on the left like this. You've got 1,048,576 rows. You are really not going to run out of room, I promise. And that's all on this first sheet, sheet 1. If you add multiple sheets with this plus sign like I mentioned, each sheet will have the 16,384 columns, the 1,048,576 rows. The way each sheet is set up, you'll notice that the intersection of a column and a row is what we call a cell. And when you click there, that cell will have a green line around it. We call that your active cell. That's how you know which one you're going to be typing in. You'll notice that each cell here has a name. We refer to that name as a cell address. A cell's address will be the column you're clicked in and the row you're clicked in. For example, this one here would be C3, and you'll need to reference that when you start writing formulas, so get really familiar with that. You'll notice on the bottom right hand corner of your active cell is a little box. We call that your fill handle. Your fill handle will do a couple of different things. It's going to let you copy whatever's in that cell, and it's also going to give you a list of some predefined items, and we'll go over some of these in a later section as well. Like I mentioned, each cell has a name. That name will be reflected right here in the name box. You can see when I click over here, this is D2, and it says D2 in this name box. And this name box does more than just tell you the name of the cell you're clicked in. You're going to see later that you can actually select groups of cells, which are called ranges, and give them names. The X will allow you to cancel your entry. The check mark will allow you to accept your entry, and then we're going to talk about functions later on in a later module, and that's where you're going to go when you want to start writing some of your formulas. Whatever's in your cell you're clicked on shows up in the formula bar up here. Your cells can hold three things. They can hold text, numbers, or formulas, and a formula is a mathematical calculation you write to get an answer. You're going to notice on the right hand side of your screen that you have a scroll bar so that if you need to scroll up and down you can. And you also have one at the very bottom of your screen in case you need to scroll left to right for some reason. You also have three buttons at the very bottom that are your views. And your views are just different ways to look at your file. You want to stay in your normal view most of the time, but you're also going to be using page layout from time to time, and you're also going to use what we call the page break preview from time to time. I'm going back to normal, and the last thing I want to point out is your zoom at the very bottom right. You can zoom in to make this a little bit larger, or zoom back out to make it a little bit smaller. And that's just a view. That's all that is. Well, that's a quick overview of how the screen itself works. What I'd like to do now is take a few moments over in section 5 and talk to you a little bit about how the mouse works, because you're going to find that whatever the mouse looks like, it will do different things. Let's go ahead and move over to section 5. We're still in Module 1 and we're all the way down now to Section 5. I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the different features that the mouse has. It's going to be important in any program you work in to recognize the different ways the mouse changes what it looks like, but especially in Excel. Let's go ahead and flip over and I'll show you the 4 different ways your mouse will look in Excel. There are 4 different ways your mouse will look when you're working in Excel, and let's start with this one. When you see a white cross like you see here, you're going to use that when you're trying to select one or more cells. If I click in any cell, that's called selecting a cell. That means that's the active cell now, the one you'll actually be typing in. If I need to select multiple cells, I'm going to place that white cross right in the middle of that cell and drag straight down or across, and that's called selecting a range. We'll talk about ranges a little bit later, but ranges are basically a group of adjacent cells. If you click away from those, you will deselect your range. The next thing your mouse will look like is these black crosshairs that you see right here. Now I got that by pointing to the little box in the bottom right-hand corner of that active cell. This is called the fill handle. The fill handle actually will do 2 different things in your computer. The first thing is there are some lists that are pre-built in Excel. Those lists are days of the week, months of the year. If I type any day of the week in this cell, let's say I put Friday in here, and I drag this down, you'll see it will continue the list for me. I can also go to the right or left, and it will do the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and delete those. If you have something in a cell that's not part of one of those predefined lists, and this could be numbers, text, anything, it will actually copy whatever's in that cell. Let's say I put the number 32 in there and I drag straight down. Notice it just copies 32. The reason it doesn't count is it doesn't know in what sequence you want to count, and we will talk about how to make it do that a little bit later, but for now, just know that the fill handle will copy whatever's in that cell. This is going to be one of your best friends in Excel. There will be times when you write formulas that you'll want to copy that formula, and this will just do that for you. The next thing you'll notice is that if I point my mouse around the edges of my active cell, I get this white arrow with a little cross behind it. That's going to allow me to pick up whatever's in this cell. Let's say I had that 32 in there again. Notice I can just point around the edges and I can drag this information where I'd like it to be and just drop it off, and it will move that information to that new cell. Those are the different ways that your mouse will actually work in Excel. What I'd like you to do is pay particular attention as we go along to this, and you'll see that this will make life a lot easier for you in a lot of different situations. Let's go ahead now and move over to section 6, and I want to talk to you a little bit about how that backstage view works. I will see you in just a few minutes. All right, we're still in Module 1, and I want to go ahead and wrap up this particular module with section 6 and talk to you a little bit about the backstage view. The backstage view is an area that you can go into where you've got a lot of different options, like if you wanted to save this file, or if you want to create a new one, or even if you wanted to go and change some of the options in Excel, you'd be able to do those things in the backstage view. Let's flip over to Excel and I will show you how to get to the backstage view and all the options. When you're looking at the tabs across the top, you'll notice the very first one says File. By clicking on File, that's going to take you into what we call the Backstage view. In the Backstage view, you'll notice it automatically defaults to the Open option. This is where you would go if you wanted to open an existing file. You will be able to look through these different places here, or browse your computer for that particular file. You would see any workbooks you've already created here. You could actually double click and open one if you'd like, or you can look through the folders and find a file that way. Back up above Open is the New option. If you wanted to create a brand new workbook, you could come in here and choose the blank workbook, or you'd be able to look at some of the templates that are in Excel, and you'll see there are a lot of different calendars and budgets and different things like that. They're great ways to start, and that way you don't have to set the whole thing up from scratch. They're templates you can use by typing over the information there. You have some save options that we'll be talking about over in Module 3. You have the ability to print. You can actually share this file with some other people if you'd like. You can export this, you can publish this, or you can close this file. If you close the file, you're not closing Excel, just this particular file that you're working on. There's also some other options at the bottom, and I want you to notice the one that says Options, because that's where you're going to be able to go to change a lot of the options that are in Excel, and we'll be doing a lot of that in a later module. But right now, I just want you to know that if you click the File tab at the top, this throws you into what they call the Backstage view. To get out of it, just hit this arrow that points to the left, and you're back in your workbook. Well, that's going to wrap up Module 1, and that's giving you a quick lay of the land here. What I'd like to do is actually go ahead and get you started on creating some new workbooks. Let's go ahead and move over into Module 2, and we'll get started.